Imagine walking out to your driveway. It's just a completely normal Tuesday morning.
Right, just a standard day.
Yeah. And you pop the hood of your car because the engine has been making this weird, persistent rattling sound for like a couple days.
Mm-hmm.
You lean in, fully expecting to see, I don't know, a loose belt or a cracked hose. And right there, intricately tangled inside the engine compartment and wrapped around your alternator, is an 8.5-foot boa constrictor.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
That's just the ultimate system shock.
Totally.
It's a situation that completely shatters our everyday domesticated script, you know?
Yeah.
Like, we all know how to handle a flat tire. We know who to call for a leaky kitchen faucet.
Yeah.
But an apex predator coiled inside your engine block.
Exactly. Your brain just short circuits. You're like, do I call the police? Animal control. A mechanic.
Yeah, who handles that?
It sounds like a scene from a horror movie, but that exact scenario is a documented real-world job pulled straight from the source material we are looking at today.
It really is.
For this deep dive, we are opening up the internal operational manuals and the verified business bio of a company called the Critter Team, and we're specifically focusing on their Spring, Texas location today.
Right.
We are going to show you the shocking, often invisible vulnerabilities in your own home and how military-grade tactics are actually being used to defend against them.
And our mission today is to look at the mechanics of this industry through a very specific lens. We're exploring how an intense, really uncompromising military philosophy can be applied to the wildly unpredictable, chaotic world of wildlife control.
Yeah, because it is chaotic.
Highly chaotic. We are going to see how this approach turns what most people think of as just a simple pest issue into an absolute masterclass in home defense, structural restoration, and really business accountability.
Okay, let's unpack this, because when I think of standard pest control, my mind immediately goes to a guy with a plastic pump sprayer putting what basically amounts to a piece of black tape over your car's check engine light.
That's a great way to put it.
You know, you stop seeing the immediate problem, but the engine is still actively destroying itself behind the scenes. But the founder and owner of the Critter Team, Mike Garrett, his approach reads less like pest control and much more like, well, a special operations tactical strike.
That is a highly accurate way to frame it, especially given his background. If we look at his history, he served 20 years in the United States Army before retiring.
20 years.
Yeah, 2 full decades. And then he founded this company back in June 2015. And when you read through these operational documents, you see that military background completely saturate the DNA of the business.
It's everywhere in the manual.
Right. It is a 100% military veteran-owned family business. Garrett brought what he explicitly calls his Army ethos directly into the civilian sector.
And that Army ethos is defined as strict discipline and zero-fail accountability, which honestly sounds incredibly intense for a company whose job is to catch raccoons and squirrels.
It is intense. But what's really fascinating is that this intensity was forged even before his military service.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The documents detail a foundational childhood lesson from his father, who was just an absolute stickler for craftsmanship and quality. The unwavering rule in his house was that any task completed to a standard that was less than perfect had to be completely dismantled, torn down, and rebuilt from scratch.
Wow. So if you're building a fence and like one board is slightly crooked, you aren't just adjusting that one board.
No, you are taking down the entire section of the fence and starting over.
That is a harsh lesson.
Precisely. And that childhood lesson carried directly into his military career, where, close enough can have catastrophic consequences,
Right.
and then it flowed directly into how he handles wildlife exclusion.
Makes sense.
Garrett actually has a direct quote in the company manual that drives this home. He says, if you're going to do something that's worth doing, it's worth doing right.
Which sounds like a bumper sticker, right?
Exactly. It's very easy to dismiss that as a generic marketing slogan. But here, it's the operational bedrock of the company. It forces them to operate entirely differently than their competitors. Well, where another company might rush through an attic exclusion job in 4 hours just to maximize their daily profit, his team mandates at least half a day, often more, for the exact same scope of work to ensure that zero-fail standard is actually met.
And because of that uncompromising standard, the sources show that he realized incredibly early on that he just couldn't trust outside contractors with his company's reputation.
Nope.
Which leads us to what might be their most rigid operational rule. They have a strict no subcontracting policy. Every single part of the job is done in-house. They operate on what they call a one-call philosophy.
Right. The strategic goal here is that the homeowner only makes one single phone call to solve the entire problem, from the initial forensic inspection and humane removal of the animal to the biological decontamination and finally the heavy structural repairs.
I have to stop you there, though, because my first instinct, and I bet yours too, listening at home, is to question that structural repair part.
Okay, sure.
Let's say I hear scratching in my ceiling. I go outside, and I see a hole in my roof soffit where a squirrel chewed its way in.
Pretty common scenario.
Right. Why shouldn't I just call a professional roofer to fix the roof or grab my local handyman to patch the hole? Why pay a specialized wildlife team to do basic carpentry work?
Because that instinct, while completely logical on the surface, is actually one of the biggest, most catastrophic mistakes a homeowner can make. Let's play out your exact scenario and look at the underlying biology.
Okay, let's do it.
You hear scratching, you see a hole, and you call a handyman. The handyman comes out, looks at the torn soffit, says, I can fix that in an hour, and seals it up tight with some fresh wood and screws.
Sounds great so far. The hole is gone. Problem solved.
Except the handyman didn't do a thorough, specialized attic sweep first. He didn't check the far dark corners of the insulation for a nest of babies. He just sealed the entry point.
Oh, no.
Right. Now that adult animal, whether it's a squirrel, a raccoon, or a roof rat, is trapped inside your house. Or worse, the mother was out foraging, and now she is locked outside while her babies are trapped inside.
Oh, wow. I didn't even think about the maternal instinct aspect.
It is a nightmare scenario. A trapped, panicking wild animal or a mother desperately trying to get back to her young will cause an unbelievable amount of physical damage.
I can imagine.
A raccoon has incredibly dexterous front paws and serious jaw strength. They will literally tear off your roof shingles from the outside to get back in.
You're kidding.
No, they absolutely will. And if they are trapped inside, they will shred your HVAC ductwork looking for an exit. They will chew through your electrical wiring, which, by the way, rodents do instinctively because their teeth never stop growing and they need to file them down.
Which is a massive fire hazard.
A massive hidden fire hazard. And if they get desperate enough, they will absolutely destroy your drywall trying to claw their way out directly into your living room.
Wow. So the quick, cheap handyman fix just turned into a massive demolition and fire restoration project.
Exactly. As the operational manual states, contractors are usually focused on fixing a roof or soffit. Our staff is trained to make repairs that help stop wildlife from getting in. To ensure animals are properly, humanely removed before the house is sealed, and to maintain that total quality control without relying on third parties, the Critter team engineered a highly specific 5-step operational process.
And looking at how they sequence this 5-step operation really highlights the difference between just setting a trap and actually solving a systemic vulnerability. Rather than just giving you a list of steps, let's look at the life cycle of how they handle an intrusion.
Good idea.
It starts with intelligence gathering. That's step 1, the inspection. Before Garrett or his team even get out a ladder, they start by just listening to the customer. They want to know the exact timing of the noises. Like, is it at night? Is it at dawn?
Which is crucial, because the timing tells you the biology of the animal. Raccoons and flying squirrels are nocturnal, so they make noise at night. Gray squirrels are diurnal, meaning they make noise in the morning and evening.
So they're essentially doing a behavioral profile on the intruder before they even look at the physical damage.
Exactly.
Right. And then when they do conduct the physical inspection, they are looking for incredibly specific forensic signs. They aren't just looking for a hole in the wood.
Right, they're looking for evidence.
Yeah, if they suspect raccoons, they are looking for full footprints left in the dust on your ductwork, or droppings the size of what a small chihuahua would leave on your roof.
Which is a lovely visual.
Right. If they suspect rats, they are looking for sebum marks, which are these greasy, dark oil smudges left on pipes and beams from the oils in the rodent's fur as it squeezes through tight spaces.
Very distinct.
For bats, they're inspecting the fascia board that trims the brick, checking for tiny urine stains on the windows directly below.
And that meticulous forensic inspection dictates exactly how they approach step 2, which is the removal phase.
Yeah.
It is crucial to note that their removal methods are 100% humane and no kill.
Yeah, that's a huge point.
They work with a huge variety of wildlife. We're talking bats, raccoons, squirrels, snakes, and there is absolutely no poison used. There are no killing traps used under any circumstances.
That's reassuring.
They use professional-grade, species-specific exclusion devices and humane traps that are entirely safe to use around the homeowner's children and household pets.
Which brings us to step 3, the aftermath. You've identified the animal, you've safely and humanely removed it from the property. But the job is barely half done because now you have to deal with the cleanup.
Yes, the decontamination.
And reading through these sources, this might be the most vital, eye-opening part of their entire operation.
What's fascinating here is how misunderstood this phase is. When people think about wild animals living in their attic, they mostly think about the annoying scratching noises or maybe like a gross lingering smell.
Right, just a nuisance.
But the real threat is entirely invisible to the naked eye. Feces and urine from bats, raccoons, or a heavily soiled rodent population contain microscopic fungal spores and severe parasites. We are talking about things like histoplasmosis from bat guano or roundworm eggs from raccoon droppings. This isn't just a mess. It is a severe airborne biological hazard.
Okay, but let me play devil's advocate for a second. If all that gross stuff is just sitting up in the attic, a place most people maybe poke their head into once a year to get the holiday decorations, is it really that dangerous to the actual living space down below?
If we connect this to the bigger picture of building science and how a house physically breathes, the answer is an absolute yes.
Really?
Yeah. Think about the basic physics of an attic, particularly in a hot climate like Texas. You have soffit vents under the eaves and roof vents on top, allowing air to move. But approximately 7 out of 10 houses have attic pull-down stairs or access hatches that do not seal perfectly.
Oh, sure. There's always a draft.
There's almost always a small gap.
Huh.
During the day, the Texas heat causes the air in the attic to undergo thermal expansion. When the wind blows outside, it creates dynamic pressure changes. This creates an overpressure system inside the attic.
And pressure always seeks equilibrium. It needs somewhere to go.
Exactly. It forces that contaminated, spore-filled attic air down the path of least resistance.
Which is right through that tiny gap in the attic stairs.
Directly into your hallway, circulating into your bedrooms, and eventually into your lungs.
Wow. That completely changes how you view a wildlife intrusion. It's no longer just a structural pest issue. It's an active biohazard threatening the air quality of your home.
Yep.
And reading the source material, I had this massive aha moment. This is exactly why the Critter team goes to such extreme lengths during the remediation phase.
It absolutely is.
Whenever physically possible, they run their heavy-duty vacuum hoses directly through the exterior soffits or straight through the roof. They actively avoid dragging contaminated insulation and feces through the interior hallways of the house.
Right, they treat the attic like a quarantine zone. And if the architecture of the house forces them to run hoses through the interior living space, they build literal plastic isolation walls in the hallway and cover all the floors.
That is intense.
The crew is operating in full PPE. We're talking specialized masks, respirators, eye protection, and protective suits. They treat it like a hazardous material spill because, biologically speaking, that is exactly what it is.
So once the biohazard is completely removed, vacuumed out, and the space is sanitized, you move to the final phases, steps 4 and 5. Damage repair and guaranteed exclusion.
The most important steps for long-term peace of mind.
Right. You've gotten the animals out, you've eliminated the health risks, but now you have to ensure they never, ever return.
And this is where keeping the wildlife out permanently requires a level of engineering and craftsmanship that goes light years beyond what you'd get from a quick trip to the hardware store.
Right.
This is where Mike Garrett's military precision really shines through. The company holds top-tier, highly specialized industry credentials. We're talking about the NWCOA BAT Standard certification.
Let's define that because it sounds official, but what does it actually mean?
NWCOA stands for the National Wildlife Control Operators Association.
Okay.
Holding their BAT Standard certification means the team is highly trained in the specific biology, legal protections, and safe handling of bats. They know exactly when the maternity seasons are, so they never accidentally trap flightless baby bats inside a roost.
That's incredibly important.
They are also RidgeGuard certified installers and bird barrier certified installers, which means they are trained by the manufacturers to install commercial-grade exclusion systems on residential homes.
Their understanding of material science is also a huge differentiator here. The operational manual specifically outlines what they will not use, and it is a direct indictment of how most people try to fix these problems.
Oh, absolutely.
They explicitly never use standard spray foam to fill holes.
No, which is everyone's first instinct.
Exactly. But in the blistering Texas heat, Spray foam degrades. It gets incredibly brittle after about a year of UV exposure and thermal baking. A determined rodent can chew right through it.
Easily.
And worse, from a visual standpoint, it leaves these ugly, expanding neon yellow blobs all over the side of your
That's
house.
not a good look.
Not at all. They also explicitly forbid the use of steel wool to plug access holes. People love stuffing steel wool into gaps to stop mice, but in the intense Houston humidity, steel wool suffers from galvanic corrosion.
Right, the moisture destroys it.
Yeah, it rusts out and literally disintegrates into dust in about 2 months, leaving permanent ugly rust stains running down your brickwork.
Instead, they are utilizing premium permanent materials. They use specialized copper mesh, heavy-duty stainless steel mesh, and 23-gauge aluminum.
That sounds heavy duty.
It is. We mentioned earlier that a desperate raccoon has a bite force capable of crushing standard thin aluminum siding like a soda can. That's exactly why the Critter team upgrades to 23-gauge aluminum. It is thick enough and structurally sound enough to withstand that kind of biological mechanical force.
And they aren't just buying generic pre-cut metal sheets and screwing them into your house. They actually bring a metal brake to the job site.
Yes, the metal brake.
For those who aren't familiar, a metal brake is essentially a massive, heavy-duty clamping machine used to bend thick sheet metal at incredibly precise angles. They custom fabricate the heavy-gauge aluminum right there in your driveway, so it perfectly matches the exact geometric profile of your home's roofline and soffit connections.
It's basically custom metal work for your roof.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Let me push back on this because it almost feels like overkill. Does it really matter if the exclusion work is aesthetically pleasing?
No.
I mean, you just had a family of aggressive wildlife living in your ceiling, dropping histoplasmosis spores on your drywall. Do you really care if the custom fabricated metal perfectly matches the exact architectural trim of your exterior paint?
If you ask Mike Garrett, his philosophy answers that question with a resounding yes. He explains in the manuals that for almost everyone, a house is their single largest lifetime purchase. It is their sanctuary.
It's true.
If a company solves the animal problem, but they leave the house looking like a patchwork quilt of shiny silver metal sheets and expanding yellow spray foam, they haven't actually fully solved the problem.
Oh, I see.
The exclusion work must be completely invisible to the naked eye.
Yeah.
It's not just about keeping the animals out, it's about restoring the homeowner's dignity and their peace of mind. The ultimate zero-fail goal is that the house should look like the Critter team was never even there.
That is a profound way to look at home repair, restoring dignity. And what makes this entire model so compelling is that this elite level of credentialed, aesthetically perfect work isn't happening in some far-off, faceless corporate facility. It's a local family business operating right in the community.
Which brings a vital, empathetic human element to the whole operation.
Yeah.
The business is run locally by Mike and his wife, Victoria, who manages the office.
Right.
She is very often the very first point of contact for a homeowner who is likely panicked, exhausted, and terrified because there's a wild animal in their house. Their family tagline actually sums up the entire business model perfectly. They say, "Let our family business take care of your family."
And to give you an idea of how hyper-localized and accessible this model is, their geographic footprint is highly targeted. Stemming from their Spring, Texas location, they are servicing a wide but defined area.
Yeah, very specific zone.
We're talking directly to you if you are in Spring, the Woodlands, Tomball, Cypress, and the surrounding communities. They operate a 24/7 emergency dispatch straight out of their base at Lumpine 627 Shadow Valley Drive in Spring, Texas, 77379.
Right in the heart of the community.
Yeah, so when you call their emergency line at 281-800-4992, you aren't being routed to a massive call center in another time zone. You're talking to a local operational hub.
And that number isn't just a 9 to 5 answering service. They answer phones 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, including holidays. Specifically because wildlife emergencies like the boa constrictor in the engine block do not care what time it is.
I want to tie their localized, community-based availability back to their humane methods because there's a specific operational detail in the source material that really struck me.
Oh, is it?
Well, we all know how brutal and unforgiving the Houston heat can get in the dead of summer. When the Critter team sets those humane roof cages to safely trap an animal, their very first stop the next morning before they do anything else is picking up those trapped animals.
That's a great policy.
They prioritize getting them out of the cages immediately, bringing them down into the shade, and giving them water so they do not suffer in the Texas sun.
It shows a profound systemic respect for the wildlife they are dealing with. They aren't treating these animals as malicious enemies. They are treating them as living creatures that simply ended up in the wrong place and need to be safely evicted.
Exactly.
The entire operation is incredibly disciplined, it's systematically ruthless in its efficiency, but it's also deeply compassionate.
So what does this all mean? It means that when the boundaries between nature and your home are breached, you don't have to settle for a handyman slapping a piece of wood over a hole and hoping for the best.
Definitely not.
You have access to a team that takes the zero-fail accountability of a military operation, combines it with highly specialized wildlife biology and building science, and gives you a true, guaranteed one-call solution.
And before you decide to save a few bucks and take matters into your own hands, this raises an important question. And it's a vital, often overlooked warning hidden in the source material. The unseen legal web of DIY wildlife removal.
Oh, this is a big one.
It really is. You might think setting up a trap you bought at the hardware store to catch a nuisance bird or a bat in your yard is a harmless weekend project.
It's like, why wouldn't it be?
Right. But because of incredibly complex state laws and massive federal regulations like the Migratory Bird Act, trapping, transporting, and relocating certain protected species without a specialized permit can unknowingly make you guilty of a federal offense.
A federal offense
Oh.
for trapping a bird.
Yes. So before you buy that trap and set it on your roof, you might want to ask yourself, do you know exactly what species you're dealing with, and do you know what the federal law says about it?
Which means sometimes the most dangerous thing hiding in your attic isn't the animal at all. It's the legal liability of trying to handle it yourself.